Paul Schrader's First Reformed is one of the most thought-provoking movies I've seen in some time, rooting its unsettling critique of Christianity and the stark realities of our world. It follows one Reverend Toller, a sickly, closed-off man running a small chapel in Albany, New York that serves more as a souvenir shop than a church. With an incredibly sparse congregation, the only thing keeping its doors open is the financial aid of a nearby megachurch called Abundant Life. One day, a parishioner by the name of Mary asks Reverend Toller to meet with her husband Michael. You see, she's become pregnant, but her husband wants her to abort the baby because of climate change. He thinks that ours is not a world fit to bring new life into, and this despair he feels is depriving him of, well, life itself. While meeting with Reverend Toller, Michael goes over a lot of climate change data, pointing out that we've already passed the point of no return that scientists warned us about for years. Toller tries to instill a sense of hope in the young man, but fails, so things only get worse.
You believe in martyrdom, Reverend?
I'm not sure I know what you mean.
One day, Toller gets called over to the house to find this in Mary's garage. Michael's planning something. And once he's made aware that Reverend Toller confiscated his vest, he shoots himself, leaving Reverend Toller to find his body. But this does not lessen the weight of Michael's words. If anything, his death makes the mission to stop climate change all the more dire. Reverend Toller decides to take up this mission, doing what little he can to make a difference. But at every step, the weight of this cause's hopelessness becomes all the more difficult for him to bear. Things are getting worse and worse for the environment by the day, and any attempt of his to make a difference is shot down by Abundant Life's billionaire donor, the CEO of an oil drilling company. So there's nothing Reverend Toller can do. His church dwindles, his efforts for change are condemned, the hopelessness he's fallen into prevents even his friendship with the now widowed Mary from consoling him. How can God forgive him or any of us for what we've done or haven't done for our planet? In his despair, a desperate thought arises. He could kill the donor. Surely that would make a difference. So he dons the vest, preparing to take out the polluting donor and self-righteous church leaders alike. It's his turn to die, to give his life following God's commandment to be a good steward of his creation, as twisted as his interpretation may be. But Mary, despite moving away, is for some reason at church today. She must have wanted to pay him a visit. And unlike those in attendance deserving of God's wrath, Mary's done nothing wrong. She's one of the few genuinely good people he knows, and now she died too. He can't do it. He hurriedly removes the vest, thank God, but he soon replaces this heinous act for another expression of despair-fueled solidarity. This plan B, as you might expect, is to kill himself in protest of the corrupt Abundant Life complicit in depriving this planet of its very namesake. At least this way, his death still has meaning. He's in his own way dying for Christ. But as he's about to drink the drain cleaner, Mary finds him, and they kiss. This admittedly shocking ending is rather vague, this final moment noticeably brighter than any other scene in the film. Perhaps this was meant to accentuate the beauty there is to be found in life, though others think this was Toller meeting God at the end, the joys of heaven being compared to that of a long, loving kiss. The director himself, interestingly enough, admits he's open to either interpretation. Whichever ending you lean towards, though, depends on your answer to one simple question. What makes a martyr? Welcome to Night City. The year's 2077, and the corpos control everything. This sprawling, neon-drenched metropolis is a haven for violent gangsters and corporate greed, where the powerful thrive and the weak are left to fend for themselves amidst the chaos, dreaming of leaving some sort of legacy in a city that will almost surely forget them. In a morbid dystopia such as this, the only solace to be found in life is through escapism. Everywhere you look, you're sure to find bright billboards beckoning you towards weaponry, sex, alcohol, and physical augmentations, dulling your senses as you drown in these neon vices. Your character, V, has things pretty well off, all things considered, making money doing odd jobs around the city that require a more lethal approach. One day, you're hired to kill a murderer, on his way to his own execution, no less. But if you lower your weapon and spare this murderer's life, you find yourself on the ride of a lifetime. The murderer in question, Joshua Stevenson, killed multiple people during an armed robbery, but since then, he's found God. He yearns to redeem himself for his actions, but more than that, he wants to show others on the same path he once walked that there's a better way. They don't have to end up like him. They can embrace God's love and save themselves from Night City's vice. So he starts telling his story, touching lives, no doubt, and soon enough, a film studio gets in contact with him, offering to make a braindance or high-tech movie out of his ongoing redemption story. But this isn't your run-of-the-mill Christian redemption Father Stu-esque bullcrap media. This is real. This braindance Joshua plans to record would capture everything. His senses, his thoughts, and most importantly, his emotions, as he serves his death sentence imitating Christ, by being crucified and dying in the recording studio, a reminder to all of God's infinite love. That's some crazy stuff, I know. Clearly, Joshua isn't right in the head. Something's seriously wrong with him. Perhaps it's the same thing that drove him to kill those people, or perhaps it's not. You can try to talk him out of it, but the studio will have none of that. They know something's wrong with him, but they're willing to let him throw away what remains of his life for the sake of recording something as raw and as real as this. Something no actor could possibly imitate. So they're more than happy to pay you thousands just to walk away. But if you don't, if you join Joshua for his Last Supper, stay awake in the garden and pray with him during his hour of agony, you bear witness to something you can never forget. Joshua's resolve, the sacred and the profane. Swing after swing after swing of your hammer, you actively nail Joshua to his cross, raise him up, and remain with him until he dies. This is real. Joshua is no messiah, but it's clear that he genuinely felt called to this path, to postmodern martyrdom, to give his life evangelizing to a world sorely in need of a missionary as real as him. But there's a darker side to this. Joshua was mentally ill and needed someone to help him through what remained of his life, not someone to streamline its end for a quick, self-centered buck. The studio doesn't care about God or religion, and much less the people. This was always about the money, profiting off people's desire to relate to something real. So what does that make this then? Joshua's baptism by blood? Or his greatest sin? There's no denying that these two men died, if Reverend Toller did die, that is, for causes they felt were greater than themselves, but their actions, no doubt, cast large shadows. Reverend Toller, for one, was mere moments away from committing an act of domestic terrorism before he settled for suicide. And both of these acts would involve breaking the fifth commandment, thou shalt not kill. And you could certainly argue that Joshua Stevenson's final act was one of audacious blasphemy against his God. Yet both of these men were willing to dismiss such ideas in favor of another, that their actions were noble and deemed necessary by God himself. You'd think that this would be a harder truth to accept. I, for one, would much rather think crucifying myself for Christ is a sin and not something God demands of me. And I'm sure you feel the same way. So why? Why did these two men continue down the paths they did? Perhaps these examples are too complex. Maybe things like big business, climate change, and brain dances are muddying the waters here. So let's strip all that extra mumbo jumbo away and focus on the most traditional form of martyrdom: giving one's life for the faith rather than sinning against God. A holy end many young Catholic missionaries aspired for generations to receive. Martin Scorsese's 2016 film Silence tells the story of two such Jesuit priests investigating the rumors that one of their own apostatized or abandoned the faith in Japan. The island nation was once open to the integration of Christianity into their country, but they quickly realized that it was being used against their government by foreign agents, the Catholic Church among them. It's for this reason that Japan outlawed Christianity within its borders and launched a brutal persecution against all who practiced the faith, including the supposed apostate Father Ferreira. Fathers Rodriguez and Garupe, both former pupils of Ferreira, knew the immense risk of this mission when they volunteered, but the duo felt called by God to face this great trial. They live in squalor. They are constantly overwhelmed with the desperation of the poor remaining Christians in Japan practicing their religion in secret. And time again, they bear witness to the merciless persecution of their newfound congregation, each of them given the option to apostatize, to step on Christ's holy image, or share in his passion. For the priests, though, the choice is far more burdensome. Apostatize and save innocent lives, or watch your fellow believers die. Father Garupe, once he and Father Rodriguez are inevitably captured, refuses to speak out against Christ, giving his life in a vain attempt to save a poor woman named Monica when his refusal to apostatize condemns her to death. Father Rodriguez, now the last Catholic priest in Japan, is forced to watch this heartless execution, a sight that begins to shake his own faith, to make him question if his dedication to God is as great as his friends, or if he will fall like Ferreira before him. At one point in the movie, he says this:
I thought that martyrdom would be my salvation. Please, God, do not let it be my shame.
Not long after, he's brought before Ferreira, who did indeed apostatize, and he's urged to do the same. Father Rodriguez, though, sees nothing but a husk of his former mentor, and he's disgusted by the sight of such a broken man, one he fears he's becoming. So he's sent back to his cell, his own Garden of Gethsemane. As he hears the agony of those trapped in the pit, he tries to remain strong, drawing on the similarities between his suffering and Christ's. And it's here that he's once again confronted by Ferreira, tempting him to bend the knee to the Inquisition.
Be quiet. Don't speak to me. You have no right to speak to me.
Oh, I do. Because you were just like me. You see Jesus in Gethsemane and believe your trial is the same as his. Those 5 in the pit are suffering too, just like Jesus, but they don't have your pride. They would never compare themselves to Jesus.
And there it is. Pride. We all have beliefs and ideals, whether they be political or religious, born of genuine goodwill or mental delusion. And a lot of the time, we feel so strongly about these things that we're willing to die on those hills. But it's vital that we evaluate what truly drives us to feel so strongly about such things. Reverend Toller, throughout First Reformed, repeatedly admits to a growing sense of pride in himself, a sin he himself believes fuels his ever-drowning despair. His actions, then, are less about making a difference in the world than they are about him being the one to do it. Joshua, too, holds himself in such a high regard that he truly feels that he's the only person in the world capable of saving Night City from its collective vice. And then there's Father Rodriguez, who, like many missionaries before him, went into this mission hoping for the opportunity to prove his love for Christ and earn his salvation. He even prayed to God, asking for the chance to die a martyr's death like Father Grupe's. And even now, he considers his own relationship with God to supersede the lives of others. But then he sees the pit, the horrors that these Christians suffer because of his refusal to betray Christ. And he can't stand for it. All that pride is washed away with their innocent blood. Agonizing over the evils before him, Rodriguez apostatizes. He steps on the face of Christ and never again professes the faith, all for the sake of these poor 5. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. This line, once spoken by Christ himself to his apostles, is what defines a martyr, religious or otherwise. Following this teaching, in fact, just about every apostle became a martyr. For centuries, many have emulated their sacrifices, hoping to realize some honorable goal, most notably joining the ranks of Christ's saints in heaven. Reverend Toller, Joshua Stevenson, and Father Rodriguez are no exceptions. But there's pride in this, and we need to be wary of it. Remember that Reverend Toller and Joshua Stevenson both, due to their pride, genuinely thought that they had to take a stand. Such pride casts heavy shadows over otherwise noble intentions and sullies moral dispositions with a distracting, deafening sense of self-righteousness. So next time you find yourself pushed against the wall, standing atop a hill you feel is worth dying on, figuratively or literally, ask yourself, what makes a martyr? The self-pride that drove Reverend Toller and Joshua Stevenson to die in Christ's name? Or the genuine, unadulterated desire in Father Rodriguez to aid his fellow man, even if it meant denouncing the God he yearned to die for? Reflect on that, and I think you'll understand yourself a lot more. Thanks for watching. And thanks again to Alex for helping me with yet another video. You know, your help on this one made all the difference. I don't think it would have been nearly as good without you. So if you're watching this, thanks again for the help. And to the rest of you, be sure to like and subscribe, because the next video is on Red Dead Redemption, and I'm excited for it.